You're listening to an Anazao Ministries podcast.
Oh, you heard the sound. You know that intro when you hear it. We are here today to discuss one of the greatest series in the HBO universe, Game of Thrones. Here are some jewels that you might not know about this show that you want to be aware of. This particular show has 10 Guinness World Records. The show itself has 10 Guinness records, and some of that includes that in 2016, that show had over 7 million people watching it on demand. Another one was this show has won 37 Emmys. This show it is the most pirated show. These are the Guinness records. And this show holds the record for the most simulcast show, which is season 5, episode 2, with 173 different countries and territories watching at the same time. What am I talking about? I am talking about Game of Thrones. This is the best show that you will ever watch on HBO, hands down. That's just my opinion. You might not like it. It's okay, because I have the hand of the king, so I can say whatever I want, because I represent the king. So you can be mad all you want. It does not matter. But I'm so glad that I have these other two gentlemen with me today. I have Will and Christian. So if you would please introduce yourself. I'm sorry, I didn't even introduce myself because I'm so excited. I'm Kino, and I'm going to be driving this ship today as we go through the world of Westeros and navigate Game of Thrones. So Will and Christian, tell us something about yourselves.
Oh, here we are. Kino coming out of the gate on fire, and I love it so much. Yeah, I am Will, one of your hosts here. Excited to talk about this series because I just finished it like a couple of weeks back, and I know I'm way late to the game, but it's way fresh on my mind and spirit, and I have opinions. Back in the day, I did not have HBO when it was at its height. I knew about it in the zeitgeist of geek culture and heard stories here and there, and I think I tried to pick up the first book and try to read it. I got about maybe 4 chapters in, and then someone told me they were 12 more books, and was like, forget that. I don't have time for that. I know. So I was like, okay, I'm putting that down. Maybe one day. And then our kids moved out of the house, and my wife and I were like, all right, it's time. We have HBO Max. It's time to watch. Let's go into here and see what all this hype is about. And we were binging hard, sometimes to 3 a.m. all right, we got to stop. We got to go to bed. We got to work tomorrow. So happy to be here. And I love it that we have 2 ministers and a seminarian talking about Game of Thrones. This is what we do. It's just my geekology. I love it so much.
How about you, Christian?
Let's see. I'm Christian Ashley. Like Pastor Will said, I am a current seminary student at the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary. It's a very fun ride, but on the Game of Thrones train, I didn't get on board until I think around the 3rd or 4th season, which would have been my senior year of college. And I got to say, man, I am so sorry I avoided it for that long. I should have been on there from day one.
It is okay. It's okay, because as long as you're on the train, then you're never going to be left behind anymore. That's the great thing. But one of the interesting thing about this show, I will say about me, is this was one of the first shows that I would always rewatch the previous season to get prepared for the new season when it dropped.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so you all had the privilege, especially you, Will, just to binge it. So I had to wait every week to just figure out, oh my gosh, who killed who at the Red Wedding? How did this all happen? Oh my God, who is the red priestess? All this.
I thought about that as I was binging it. I was like, how did people wait whole seasons for the next one? But I did notice as the season was unfolding, I was like, the big, huge. Towards the end of each season, it wasn't the final episode that was the biggest episode or the most shocking. It was the second to last. Mm-hmm. They would always do this one huge. I noticed the pattern. I was like, oh boy, here we go. It's the second to last episode. Something's about to go down. Someone's about to get killed. Something's going to happen, because they need to give you at least one more episode to kind of coach, to help you breathe, to help you relax a little bit. That over the summer you're going to be okay after you finish watching Game of Thrones. So I definitely saw that pattern. So it was around season 4 or whatever, or 5. I was just like, okay, second to last episode, that's gonna be a big one. Then we're gonna have just to help you cope and breathe, and then we'll go on to the next season. So they knew what they were doing when they were rolling this out, for sure.
Oh my gosh. And you see why this show has won as much as it has and has been nominated, because it's a really good show. It really is a show that can entice and help you think about some stuff. And so today, all we're gonna do is we just gonna talk. We're not gonna do spoilers because we assume that you already seen it. So if you haven't seen it, shame on you, because it's been out since forever. If you don't have HBO Max, just hit me up on Patreon. I might shoot you my login information if we have a good relationship. Maybe, but I don't know. But
spoilers out the window. I'm way late to the game, but if you haven't watched it, just stop now. Go watch it, and then come back to this episode later on.
Yes, because when I tell you, so Will, I was like you. I was trying to read the book too, but when I got Fire and Ice, and it was like the size of the Bible, I said, I can't do this and the Bible at the same time. I cannot.
I have a life. I have a family. I have people. Yeah. Yep.
So I have to say this though. So I was like, okay, I've been into audiobooks now. My wife got me into audiobooks. I like to have books. I like to write in the books. And so I looked up the audiobook for Fire and Ice. It is 33 hours. 33 hours and 46 minutes. That is a day and a half.
Oh wow.
That's just ridiculous. But that's how much this thing is Game of Thrones is huge. And so we're just gonna just talk about what we liked about it, what we didn't like about it. We're just gonna flow into it. So here it is now. My first question to my other host is, what is your favorite quote from the show? And so I'm gonna go first, and this is mine. Mine is, "It is hard to put a leash on a dog once you have a crown on his head." By Tyrion Lannister.
Yeah,
that was my favorite quote. What about you, Christian?
Let's see. It was hard to bring this down. I got it down to 3.
Okay, good.
Okay, now I'm going to use this one. And this is from, I can't remember if it's said on the show proper, but I know it's from one of the chapters in the first book. It's Ed talking to Arya, and he says, "When the snows fall and the white winds blow, the lone wolf dies, but the pack survives." And that one hits me a lot as someone who is bound and determined every day to not learn my lesson and not be a lone wolf Christian, that I can't do that. And it's just that lesson I have to relearn over and over again. So it's nice to hear quotes like that affirm, even from non-Christian sources. Yes. We can't do this alone.
No, we cannot. Oh, that's awesome.
That's super strong. Yeah. I was sucked into. I mean, I love my dog so much, and so like every time I watched an episode and one of the wolves or dire wolf showed up, and I would like turn to Woody and I'm like giving him hugs. He's like, "What are you doing? Get off me!" Or a wolf died. I'd be like, "No!" And I go over there and grab my dog, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, he must be watching Game of Thrones again." But it's so the quote that I kind of quote, "Winter is coming," is so strong, and it's so iconic, and you hear it in just the zeitgeist of pop culture as all. Even before I even knew what it meant, you heard it, and then we still say it now. Like even before we even watched Game of Thrones, we were saying it, And but for me, the quote, because it comes up at the beginning and it's pretty climactic at the end, and it's when the expert swordsman is training Ira and says, there is only how's it go? There is only one thing to say to death: not today.
Not today.
Not today. And as a pastor whose week is hinged on Sundays, which is every Sundays and Easter, and then the whole Christian year is hinges on Easter Sunday, that just hit me. It was like, yep. There's only one thing to say to death: not today. And the fact that she says it at the end, and she's the one who like kills the Ice Queen. Ice King. I had no idea that was coming, and I was just like, oh my gosh, this having her be the one, and that was just so epic. I was like, yes, I literally jumped out of my seat cheering.
So I have to say, I was talking to a friend of mine about doing this podcast, and I asked him the same question, and that was his quote. Straight, not even Googling. Now, granted, I had to Google mine. I'm just going to be honest. I had to Google mine because I was like, it's been so long. But he said, not today. And I was like, she did say that. And I was like, wow, it's interesting that this show can still resonate almost 10 years after it aired. That is still making an impact. So then my next question to you all is, what house would you join or be a part of? Either a greater house or lesser house, it doesn't matter. So I gotta also say that I just did the Google thing, and there was a whole questionnaire thing, and I've answered all the questions. Because at first, this is funny thing, and I thought about it, I said, you know what, I'll probably be House Lannister. I thought House Lannister, money, power manipulation. I like that type of stuff. You know what I'm saying? Just like to play with people. But then I took that questionnaire and it said Stark. I was like, based off my answers, I was like, okay, I can see that. I can see being with Stark, but I don't like the cold. That's the only issue. I just don't like to be cold. That is the only issue. So I still probably just choose Lannister. I would probably choose Lannister. Yeah.
It is funny that you said that, because I was thinking about the different houses and who I wanted to associate with, who I thought was the coolest, who could protect me. And then the Starks have huge dogs to hang out with, like dire wolves. I love them things so much. And so I was like, man, the Stark. But then I was like, the climate makes a big difference to me. As someone who grew up on the coast and the beach, who loves it so much, and like the potential for waves and surfing and ships, that I was like, the House Stark will be fun, but yeah, it gets cold, and I don't want that. I'd be good for a day, and I like hanging out with the wolves, but yeah, King's Landing. Only because because of the climate. It looked so tropical. It looked like they were hanging out in the Caribbean. And I was like, man, I want to be there. So until it starts to get mowed down with fire, then then I can escape. But it is pretty funny, because this place, I mean, a lot of this was filmed in Iceland, right?
Yes,
like a lot of it was filmed in Iceland, and I was able to go to Iceland this past summer, and we hadn't watched Game of Thrones yet. We knew like some parts of Star Wars and other things had been filmed in Iceland, so we were kind of looking at that. I think Thor: Dark World was filmed there as well. So I was looking at some of that, and then as we were watching, like, oh, there's Iceland. I think I've been there, or I love that part. That definitely looks like Iceland, because. And so we geeked out hard on that, because we loved our trip to Iceland. But you're right. Like, I started, there's different houses you want to associate with if you like value your life. But then there's like, for me, it was like climate. And there's no way I'm hanging out the ice wall. I'm going to the Caribbean.
Wait, hold on. You know what? It's not even about the ice. The White Walkers, though, like, granted, they have been destroyed, but if we were still there, no, we got to deal with the White Walkers and no, all that other stuff that comes with it. Yeah, no, you know what? No, it's no. I feel you. What about you, Christian?
I'm hearing a large anti-cold weather bias up here.
Yeah.
It really offends me as someone who's very warm-blooded. That extra blubber I have keeps me warm, I guess, from everyone else. I mean, people make fun of me up here because I'll go up to class when it's like 32 degrees, just walking from my dorm to class with my t-shirt and basketball shorts on. It's like, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with you?
Christian's walking around like a middle schooler.
Yes.
In winter. Every time I drop my kids off to school in winter and I saw the boys walking, I'm like, why are they wearing shorts? Who's raising these kids? But so that's, I see Christian walking around. I would be the one in Louisville going, oh my gosh, Christian, you got to put on some pants. What's going on? But, if you love the cold weather and want to feel it, there you go.
Yeah.
So more power to you.
Before I get my answer to Iceland as well, I was there 5 years ago, and there was actually a tour being led by someone dressed up as the Hound.
Oh, wow.
It was so fun.
That's great.
I enjoyed it so much. But on to the actual answer, I would say Stark would probably be where I align, but in the interest of giving a more interesting answer, I'm going to say House Forrester from the Telltale game series. Either of you have been able to play, I know you're not a gamer, Pastor Will, but they are essentially a proto Stark kind of team. They're a loving family. Bad things happen to them because this is Game of Thrones, but like, I would choose the people that would love and support me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Cool.
So then so with these houses and all of this, now here is where we get into the meat of it. I'm telling you now, we're getting right into the meat of it. We moving right ahead. So I want to ask you all, and I'll let you all answer and then I'll answer. But my question is, what do you like about Game of Thrones? what issues, if you had any, with the series from the beginning to the end.
Golly, there you go. Christian, you go for it. I
Yeah.
go first. I got some thoughts brewing.
I'd say my number one is the characters. Like, I love plots all day long, but if you give me some characters to care about, I'm in. And the Starks are a pretty good start with that. And then later
Yes.
on, when you start, you hate Jaime. You kind of don't like Tyrion that much. But then as time goes on, you go, oh my gosh, these people are well-fleshed people that have more to them just generic villain or, generic side villain. They could be heroes in their own right sometimes. And that's what brings me back over and over, because I want to see them mature. I want to see them succeed despite all the bad things that are happening to them.
Yeah. What was interesting is that I saw a YouTube video that took the book and ran it through some type of computer generated thing and figure out who was all interacting with everything. And they said that Tyrion is the main protagonist in the whole series because he touched most, if not all, the characters in some way, shape, form, or fashion.
Yeah,
he's almost like Kevin Bacon. Three degrees of separation of Kevin Bacon. Yeah, that's what Tyrion was. Yeah, so I like that. All right, what about you, Will?
Yeah, I would say that too. They're definitely characters that you love and care about, and be careful because they may not last another episode if you get too attached. And I kind of had in my mind, there were some spoilers since I was so late to the game. I kind of knew who was going to last to the end. I knew some big themes along the way, what was going to happen. Again, like I said, like I knew about the red wedding, but I didn't know it was going to be that red of a wedding and that shocking, or when it was coming. There was a point when that was getting ready to unfold and they closed the doors and locked. I went, oh my gosh, here it is. No, oh no. And I had no idea that like Robb Stark was going to die that early, and I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't really realize that. So and like we've said before, like it's a biblical show because of the violence and the power and the betrayal and the family systems and the dysfunction and the quest and hunger for redemption and revenge, and all those things were a part of the story, and leading towards the end of what I didn't like about it. There's definitely like moments when you felt uncomfortable. It's like watching Breaking Bad and you're like, why am I watching this? Like, this is like making me feel horrible. But then when you think about like the reason, if it makes you uncomfortable, good, it should. And there are some, exploitation and kind of, violence porn or whatever you want to talk about. Like, are we doing it just to do it? Does it serve the story? But I think because of that world, it kind of stuck with that theme. And, yeah, so those kind of parts that made me feel uncomfortable, but it should, and we talked about before about how all those themes and happenings in the Bible as well. And I think towards the end, there's a lot of character development towards the end. I didn't mind the last. I heard so much about the last season about how bad. You talked about how like the world record of how popular it was, and boy, did it fall from grace fast. Like fans loved it so much, and then that final season, boom. I think Benioff and Weiss or whatever like had like Star Wars movie contracts and all kinds of stuff because they were so popular. As soon as season 8 happened, they were like, nope, people dropped them like a heartbeat. And it's like, oh, why did they do that? And so as I watched it, I didn't think it was that bad, but the regression or going right back to where the characters were at the very beginning of the series was a little disheartening. So that's what I disliked. I was like, oh man, it felt a little rushed there at the end. And we built all this for this character development, and then to just fall back to what they were in the first couple of seasons, I didn't like as much.
Yeah. And I agree with you on that. I think one of the great things I liked about this series was all the foreshadowing that was happening in the show and behind the scenes, where if you didn't pay attention, you would have lost like the jewels and the nuggets that was dropped along the way. And even if you read the book, you still was seeing the book come to life in the series form. And yes, they had some changes. Yes, there's always gonna be some major changes, but sure. the foreshadowing and how everything was set up to, oh gosh. Now this is where I don't like is season 8. I just the ending just didn't make really sense, and I get it because they were trying to wait for Martin to finish his to get it caught up, but he couldn't. And we understand. But as a whole, it was fascinating to think about something that happened in season 1 was impacting throughout the rest of the series. Throughout, and then not only that, but the stuff that happened before the series even started was making an impact. All of this started because somebody said something about somebody and took somebody's girlfriend, and then they got mad. That's how it all started out. That's how it all started out. It was over a girl, and most of the wars are fought over anyway over a girl.
Yes.
Yeah.
Trojan War on.
Yeah. But it was. I think that the beauty of the foreshadowing and to just the place, like in the second season, the second episode of season 2, where Ed Stark gets beheaded, and you was like, I just fell in love with him. How is that? How? And then to see Arya take that. And from your quote, Christian, she did the total opposite though. She became the lone wolf, but always came back to the pack though. She always came back to be rejuvenated for something that she always had to do bigger. That was like, wow. That was wow. So that was the things that I like, the foreshadowing, but Will brought it up, and I'm gonna have to talk about it. It's just the last season. In my mind, I'm like, we waited 2 years for this. Now, granted, I sat and watched it.
Yes,
because I waited for 2 years for it. I'm gonna finish.
So help me understand the timing. So season 7 ended, and then fans had to wait 2 years for season 8. Is that what happened?
I believe so.
Thereabouts.
Yeah, thereabouts. And then. Yeah, I'm curious on your guys' take on season 8, because I have mine, but I didn't have to wait the 2 years. I just jumped right in, and my expectations were super low because I had heard like my sister-in-law, my brother's wife's huge Game of Thrones fans, and I kind of kept along with her a little bit, what was going on, what she liked, and she was just so stoked for so many points that happened throughout the series. But then season 8, she was like, oh my gosh, they ruined it for me. And I was like, oh wow. So when I got to it, I was expecting to feel the same way, and I didn't necessarily feel that. But I'd love to hear your two take on season 8, and then I'll chime in on what I thought.
But let me preface this with, when Benioff and Weiss decided to sign on for the series, they did not sign on to make an ending for it. So I will cut them some slack there. However, the vitriol begins now. I started getting really down on the show around season 5-ish. I kept watching. There was still stuff I enjoyed that happened, but it's just like, there's no direction here. They're waiting for a man who's never going to finish something at this point in time. It feels, maybe he will, but they did not sign up to write an original ending for this show. And, Kino, from what I remember, you're a big anime fan. So this happens all the time for older stuff, is that they'll just make an original ending. Sometimes it's good. Sometimes it's really bad.
Yeah.
And I would argue this is in the really bad category. And it's just, can't remember who brought up character regressions earlier, but that is one of the things. Yeah. Pastor Will, thank you. That is what hurt me the most. I mean, just to see Jaime give up everything again to go back into Cersei's arm after having learned his lesson finally, and then dying with her was like, you didn't know what to do with him. And just other stuff, just you waited 2 years, and this was the end result.
Yeah, because you have to. I'm not to cut you off, but I'm gonna piggyback on what you're talking about. Because think about this, Will. We understood by, I think maybe by season 4 or 5, that Daenerys was going to come at some point, and to watch her in the background in Essos gather the army that she had with her dragons, and to make her way, and the people in King's Landing hearing about it, and we're watching it, knowing that this is going to come. This has to be an epic battle, because you have 2 queens that are that's claiming the Iron Throne. When the series started out, you had 5 kings that had a claim to the Iron Throne. So it went from the men, all the men died, and then there was nothing but the women was left. And so then to get to this point where Daenerys just flips,
oh my God,
all of a something like You did all of that to free all these people to then go and kill the other people that they had nothing to do with this. Like, no. That wasn't cool. Like, that wasn't cool. Like that I think out of everything, because there's still some more stuff, but out of everything, that was the most hurtful thing to witness, knowing how she had evolved. Like, she had literally, when she came out of she was reborn when she went through the fire. She was reborn, and she had a different mindset about herself, that when she got to where she was supposed to be, she ended up taking on a narrative that was no longer hers, but it was in her bloodline. And that was an issue. Because again, she had grown, she released. Let's go back. Y'all remember when she was buying those slaves and she gave up that dragon, and he was talking junk. I can't think of the guy name. The slave master was talking junk to her in old Valyria.
Yeah.
And she was like, I can talk Valyria too. That's my native tongue. The car is boom. Yes. Yes. We was like, yes, we was waiting for this. This is what we talk. Dragons burning them up. Yes. And then you come and she gets to the Iron Throne. She gets to, only to do it in blood. We thought that she was going to be more of a diplomat and handle this. And I understand you got to kill some folks. I get it. You got to kill some folks. You can't have your competition still alive. They have to die. I get it. But not the people. The people didn't have nothing to do with it. And that seems as though she and Cersei was on the same wavelength, when that was never the case in the first place. Because Cersei was all jacked up because she married a man who didn't love her in the first place, because her father told her to, and she just still loved her brother. And it's you know, but she was a mother, and we get her fighting for her children. We get that. But then when you lose your children, you got nothing else. I get it. Listen, you the queen. You can do what you want. You can. But for her to have Cersei and Daenerys on the same wavelength, that was disappointing. That was really disappointing to see those two women who should be total opposites were actually seen in the same realm on the last episode. That hurt. Yeah, that hurt.
Yeah.
That hurt.
Yeah, I think there are moments along this series that was really hard to watch. The Red Wedding, Cersei and the Shame Walk, was super hard to watch. And then, it was hard watching people and innocent children being burned to death because of one woman's rage. For us, I guess my wife and I, as we were walking, we were like, it's hard to change, your family history, your family pattern. It's hard to detach yourself and be different from all that talk of the skepticism of those around her. Like, don't, is she going to be like her dad? Is she going to be like her dad? We already see her kind of, little, kind of resistance to Jon Snow, and then what? Nope, I'm not going to fight the North and the Night King just yet. I need to go down and take this. We saw some skepticism in the way that Sansa looked at her, and that she was jealous of, and Dany was jealous of Sansa. I was like, oh boy, here we go. And so I had the feeling it was going to go that way. She was just going to nope, she's not going to be any different than her dad, and she's going to be like that. And so for me, I saw that track, and I wish it had been different. But as my wife said, she was like, well, that makes sense. That happens in real life. It is hard to detach yourself from family patterns. Yeah. And the end, when the dragon doesn't, when Jon Snow stabs Dany in the back to finally kill her, and then that dragon comes, you're like, oh, here we go. The dragon's going to kill Jon Snow. But what the dragon turns to the throne and melts the throne. That's like, what killed Dany? What killed her? Was it Jon Snow, or was it the seduction of power and that throne that really killed her? So the dragon took out the thing that killed his mother, and that was the throne. And that was pretty powerful for me to fly off with her after melting down that throne. I was like, that makes complete sense. That was brilliant. I like that part. But yeah, killing children, melting down a whole city with fire. That was really hard to watch. And there was one of the moments like, oh, come on, guys, why are we doing this? I can understand the weight and the really hope that she would take and do things differently. While that was disappointing for the fans and for people viewing. And we just have to say, I need to say it, like my least favorite character got to be King at the end. I mean, I feel sorry for Bran, but like the most boring dude who stares at you and says, I knew you were coming. Oh, I can see all. He had these little one-liner, cheesy one-liner wisdom saying, I'm like, oh my gosh, whatever. Eye-rolling moments for me. And then they make him king. It makes sense because he started off the show from episode 1 and the powerless becoming the most powerful. I like that. We see that in scripture. We see that with the Hobbit. We see that in Lord of the Rings. So I totally get what they were trying to do with that trope. But I was like, oh my gosh, that my least favorite character is the one who's king. Oh boy. Yeah. That's it.
so Will and Christian, and this brings into my next question, which I want to ask is, what do you think is the most controversial moment or moments of the series?
I would say it was the decision to change Sansa being the one who married Ramsay from, was it Jane Poole or something like that from the books? I can't remember off the top of my head. And
Ramsay was awful.
It was needless because it makes Littlefinger look like a moron. So they ever think that Ramsay would be on his side. It makes it really destroys her agency in that moment. And that's something we can talk about later about female agency, and the rest of the series kind of dies after a while. Not totally, but for Sansa herself, like she should have just stayed in the Vale, and it's one of the worst things that they did, in my opinion. And I would also say, briefly, it's Stannis sacrificing Shireen. Not that he wouldn't do it, but I believe that the way they portrayed it in the show, I don't think he was desperate enough to do it like the way they wanted to portray it.
Yeah.
I think he would, given pushed to the brink, he would do it, but not like this.
Yeah, so I see that, but going with Stannis was being fed false hope from the Red Priestess, though. Like she was one of his advisors, and I'm like, why are you gonna listen to this crazy woman that come out of nowhere about what you're supposed to do? And your daughter has more information than anybody about what's going on in the whole thing, but you don't want to listen to her because I forgot how did the Red Priestess convince him to kill her?
I think
it had to be
the storm, right?
Say it again.
I wanted to stop the storm or something, so they have a better battle.
No, it was because it was the blood that needed to be shed, so he can gain victory.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. But here's the thing. So I watched this other YouTube video that Stannis, Robert, and what was the other brother? What was the sword swallower? I love that line. I love that line. That was a funny line.
No, not Loras. Renly.
Renly, right? They all had Targaryen blood in them. Which made them give them the right to claim the throne. But I'm like, no. But I see what you're trying to do, but I don't like it. But I think for me, the most controversial thing, and it's not really controversial, but I think it was finding out the origin of the Night King. Finding out how did this come about, and to know that the children of the forest created the Night King to help them to fight against humans, in order for them to be turned against them, was like, wow. I was like, Dad, that's messed up. That's messed up. Like, oh, you can't do that. And I think also, it was the, how can I say this? It was the inability to create or forge Valyrian steel. Because those swords, gosh, there's so much we could talk about. But those swords that those houses had, most of them, not all of them, were made from Valyrian steel, and they had such a beautiful history and everything, and to have, was it ice? No, it wasn't ice. What was Eddard Stark's sword that got forged down?
Was that dragon scale? Dragon?
No. I don't remember his name.
Oh gosh. Ice. It was ice.
Okay.
It was ice. to see Ice get breaking down into the wedding. What was the widow? What was
Widow's Wail.
Widow's Wail, and what was the other one? The little dagger that
that she killed him with. She killed the
she
Ice
did
King.
kill him with it. She did.
Mhm.
She did. But I thought the Widow's Wail and not Needle. Oh my gosh, Needle. Oh gosh, I remember. Okay, anyway. It was I thought that if, and I don't again, I didn't read the books, I don't know all the stuff in the book, but I thought, so Christian, let me just go to you then.
Oathkeeper.
Thank you. It was Oathkeeper. Thank you. That it having those swords, even though they weren't a part of the main story, they were a part of the lore that drew people into the Game of Thrones. Like literally to find out the history about Ice, Oathkeeper, Needle, the Widow's Wail, Widow's Tale. I can't think of Jaime's sword. But every main character had a sword that was tied to their house that had an origin that came from the old Valyria. Yeah, and that's so I think that was one of the things that I thought that was controversial. Just you didn't have someone who could not well, let me say forge it from the actual iron ore itself. So that was me.
Yeah, and I like it in high fantasy that that swords have names and histories and personalities unto themselves. I just love it. I love it that swords have names. That's a cool part. I think for me the controversial part, like I mean, there were some times when the exploitation of women was just over the top for me to watch and see, and it was just hard to watch, and it was like, why am I doing this? But it's a reality in our world, and you need to face it. And holding up that mirror again to the human condition and what our world faces, and that I'm sheltered from, that's a reality for a lot of people in the world. And then there was parts like they did this in Walking Dead too. So you had the governor that was so bad, and then you had like, oh, we're gonna up this again, and Negan's gonna be even worse than the governor, and like they go that way. So you had Joffrey, who's like horrible, and then like we're gonna up it again, and Ramsay's gonna be even worse than Joffrey. It's like, oh, this poor girl has to put up with these awful dudes. And then the torture of Theon. You have to forgive me, guys. Like my pronouncing fantasy names, I'm horrible. I can't do it. I can recognize them on paper, but I have a hard time pronouncing their names. So Theon, I guess I'm saying that right, or people. But like to see the torture of certain people and them drug through that. For me, that was it wasn't necessarily controversial, like in terms of plot moves by the creators, but just as you watch it, there are times, and I can understand that this show's not for everyone. No, it really isn't. But as we've said before, there's some parts of the Bible that are just as what am I trying to say? Just as rated R, rated X as the movie, and so as the show. So those are my parts. Just they weren't like overall like story beats that were controversial to me. But you could tell when you have something so popular, you want to keep it going beyond the books, and I don't want it to be. You want it to be a cash grab. You don't want it to be a cash grabber. Like we got to do a couple more episodes because it's so popular, and then it's hard to stick a landing for any kind of story or movie and that kind of thing. Even my sermons, I have a hard time ending them because I just can't. It's hard to stick the landing. I know. I was like, man, I can get the plane in the air, but man, how do I land this? And so the same way with the show. So that those are the parts for me. It was just kind of hard to watch, but one of my favorite characters, Arya, like her storyline and her able to get revenge from the Red Wedding, and then this religious thing that she went through that was kind of weird, but come out with it gave her the power and the effort to like death not today and kill the Night King. And then I loved her at the end, like at the final end, she's on that ship. She's going to go explore. She's not going to get married to anybody. She's not going to settle down. She's going to go out and explore. So please either make that spinoff show or do a book about that or a graphic novel. I mean, let's do a comic book series or graphic novel or book of her adventures post season 8. Like I want to know that story. So George Martin, if you're listening, please let's do that one. Don't drop what you're doing. Don't drop what you're doing. Finish whatever you need to finish. But like someone equip somebody to do that graphic novel, because I'll buy that in a heartbeat.
But that's so funny because we knew that Arya was going to be something because she automatically said, I'm not getting married. I don't like wearing dresses. I don't like any of this stuff. Listen, I'm out here fighting with the boys. So we knew that and to see her the evolution of her story. Oh, that was so beautiful.
Really
For her to get the revenge that she so was needing to have because that was driving her for the longest and that she was able to become the faceless man and all that. I mean, just it's just that was that was good. That was good. Yeah, I like that. All right. So here's my next question. My next question is, how do you think the series explored the power, leadership, and ethics? How do you think this series explored the power, leadership, and ethics? Like how is that? Because we already know that everybody wants to be on the Iron Throne. You do, and I get it because I mean that is a good seat to have. It's a good seat to have, unless you are watching what's the other series now? I suppose I won't
House of
mention
Dragon.
House of Dragon, but I'm mentioning it now. I'm mentioning it now. House of Dragons. If you're
Sure.
watching that, yeah, you might want to hold off. But
It's next on our list to watch. We haven't watched it. I know about it, but I'm okay with spoilers too because I've heard about it. But yeah, we'll see what happens.
Then you can join Kino and I on that episode that we're doing, and I think in about a month.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you have every region having its own power struggle for who is controlling that area, who has allegiance to the new king, the old king, who has allegiance to the old gods, the new gods, the faceless one, the drowned gods, and all of this. And so I want to pick your brains just a little bit and ask you, what do you think? How do you think this series explores these topics of power, leadership, and ethics? And I want to start off by saying, let's not forget about the Order of the Maesters.
Right.
Let's not forget about the Order of the Maesters because that has to be included in this conversation.
Yeah. I'm gonna make the pitch for Christian to start a class or make a pitch to his professors to have that's the name of the class. It's power, leadership, and ethics in the Game of Thrones. How to be and not be a pastor and priest in the modern post-Christian world.
Yeah,
that is the class. Watch Game of Thrones and then talk about. No, I think you're right. Like it's all about power. It's all about leadership. It's all about kind of the ethics. And I think this show just reveals and unveils for us the seduction of power and what people will do to take it. The only person in this entire show, I think, who I mean, Arya was about revenge, and she had her list of names that she was going to take out. But then Jon Snow was the only one who was like, I'm going to stick to my words, and I'm going to lead by example, and I'm going to defend Sam, who they end up becoming best friends. And he didn't want the king, he didn't want the throne. And there was that quote too: "Is like whoever wants the throne probably shouldn't be on it." Is the other. So I think Jon Snow shows that kind of leadership all the way up to the end. But yeah, the seduction of power. Leadership, is it for yourself or for your people? Who you're really taking care of? Is it your own family, or is it really the masses that you're entrusted with? And then the ethics along the way is like, are you willing to bend your ethics to get that power, or are you going to stick to your word? I think the Starks, Jon Snow in particular, was like, I'm a man of my word. I gave you my word. I'm not going to break it. And that was the principle that led him through that. And I think the other, oh man, I can't believe I forgot her name, the one who was made the knight there at the end by Jamie.
Oh, Lady Brienne,
like such a good character, and like she stuck to her oath and word, and stuck to her principles all the way through. And I looked up to that, and I thought that was expressed pretty well. So yeah, it's all in there.
That's good. What about you, Christian?
I think what it shows us is who we are, and you give people a taste of power, and it is so seductive. It's like, I can use this for me. Okay. And then maybe it starts with good intentions. It's like, I want to become, president so I can look after the nation, or I want to be in charge of this church because I think we can get some good things done. And sometimes, yeah, that works. But then when there's no checks and balances around, when we're not right with God, it's going to lead downhill. And it just proves like the cyclical nature of humanity is we will learn our lesson. Maybe we'll do better. Then we screw up and we go, well, might as well keep going. Learn our lesson again. A rinse, repeat. Story of my life. Story of everyone's lives.
Yeah. 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 And I think the main thing that we see with the characters that Will pointed out is that having strong ethics that did not come from anywhere else but yourself, in the terms of in deciding that I want to be different than everyone else around me, really made people stand out. Because funny enough, even Tyrion had ethics. He stuck to his guns. He knew what he was good at, and he stood on that, and he was great at what he did.
As loose as he lived with like his sex and booze, but for Sansa, he was like, no, I'm not gonna. And she told him later on, she goes, "You're the only one who respected me and treated me well. You're the only one." And even in the midst of like, as this poor guy who like everybody picked on and saw him as a mutant or less than because of who he was and what he represented and what he was born with, he had a heart for, I'm going to take care of her and not exploit her as others have. And that came out. But yeah, I think you're right. Like, I didn't mean to step on your, words too, Kino, but I think that leadership there of, you're wearing the hand, was there. You're wearing your hand to help remind and hold accountable the king or queen to these principles. If they got off, they're an advisor. They're the ones who are supposed to help steer them in the right direction. And I hope, there are people in my own lives that are like, I don't anoint them as my hand, but like, I hope there are people who walk alongside me who will remind me of who I am and who I belong to, which is the Lord, and what I'm in for, what I'm in this for, and not my own gain, but to serve Christ and serve others.
But then going to Christian's point, we see that power corrupts. Power corrupts, and if you don't have a good moral center, then the power is going to corrupt you even more, because you're seeing, oh, this is good. This is what it's almost like drinking sweet tea for the first time. You're like, oh my gosh.
Why was I drinking unsweet tea? I think Dani, she had problems. She wanted to do things differently. We're going to do this differently. But then she saw her right-hand woman beheaded in front of her. And she was like, nope, it's over. Nope, the game's on. Like, no more. And the people around her were like, oh crap, what just happened? And she saw that. So there were things along the way. It wasn't just, I guess, the seduction of the throne. She wanted it, but she also saw what others were capable of doing and didn't want that to happen again. I feel like she did the wrong thing. She could have done things differently. But again, she watched her right-hand woman that she really cared about and loved beheaded right in front of her face.
Yeah. But we also see how those type of moments where you witness some type of traumatic, whatever it is, it shaped their identities from there on out. Because talking about Tyrion, I remember the scene between him and Cersei when they was talking to each other, and she was like, you killed my mother when you came out of the womb. And he was like, wait a minute, she's my mother too. I didn't do that. But that in her mind was like, you are the worst of the worst. And even though we're family, I don't care about you. But funny enough, he still cared about her, that he was protecting her even to the very end. Even to the very end. And I was like, wow, that again speaks to his ethics and his character. Don't not regret, he might be loose. He loved to drink and he loved to sleep around. He did. But when it came down for him and his business and what he was trying to do, he was all about that. And I like that. I did like that. That showed me that you, even when people didn't treat you right, you still treat them better than they treated you.
Right.
Even if they didn't know it. And that was, I thought that was an awesome thing. Okay. Oh my gosh. Listen, we could stay here forever.
Yeah. It could be a 3-parter, an 8-parter.
Oh my gosh.
We could do it for 7 seasons and people love it. And then the 8th one, people are like, what are they doing?
So all right. I'm gonna jump in and ask this question. How do you think the series depicted good and evil? Do you think that the series was able to distinguish between the two, or was it the lines was blurred?
When I look at A Song of Ice and Fire, a Game of Thrones, I see a man who has no hope in his life. And this is the direct result of that. I mean, it's very similar if we remember the old myth of Pandora's jar. It's not actually a box. Hope being released to us is a good thing because we have something to hope in. We have Jesus Christ. But to the Greeks, that story was a downer ending because they had nothing to hope in. So they saw hope being released as like the ultimate evil in some respects. And I see in Game of Thrones, like, there is no hope. I mean, maybe people can be better. It's like the best we're going to get. Like, maybe Bran will successfully lead the kingdom. Who knows? But it just shows humans as who we are without Christ, which is self-centered, focused only on what we desire. But there's no hope in that.
Yeah. What about you, Will?
Yeah, I think it definitely is a postmodern, post-Christian understanding of good versus evil. I mean, you definitely have, like you said, the religious order who were trying to do good, but yet they were exploitive as well. They had their own kind of pantheon of gods and spirituality that they were trying to live up to. The red sorceress and that kind of stuff. And but yeah, it was definitely one of those things where like you definitely knew. Um, you knew when you were feeling so uncomfortable, this stuff was going like, yeah, that's evil. And but then it's hard too because even the revenge moments, you're like, oh yeah, you cheer it, but then you're like, wow, that's not necessarily like you want to see either, death on any kind. So yeah, it was definitely blurry, but there's definitely those themes are there. Even cheering for dragons and cheering for, being upset when one dies and brought back to life as a zombie. I mean, come on, zombie dragons. I'm there. I'm all over it. Like that was the coolest thing. But yeah, there's definitely a blurred line there. It was definitely a big part of the show. But man, you really had to. It was nuanced through and throughout.
Yeah. So we've established that every good person can become evil, and every evil person can be redeemed if you allow yourself to be that way. And the reality is, because I have to throw this in there because the Maesters, like the Maesters, though they seem as though they were just the keepers of wisdom and the messengers of the day, we saw that some of them, though they received the same type of learning, assimilated into the houses that they were assigned to.
Right.
Like
the neutral parties they're supposed to be.
Right. But we saw that there's no neutrality in all of this. Like all of them had their own agenda. All of them. Gosh, I can't remember the Starks Maester. Oh my gosh. Forgive me for not having his name. But he had his own agenda. That even to the very end, his agenda was that a Stark had to remain in Winterfell. And those kids had to leave Winterfell just so that the Starks will have somebody in Winterfell. Yes.
Lewin.
Thank you. Maester Lewin. Yeah. And it is this is what I'm saying. If you think you're good, trust me, you're not good. If you think you're good, you're not good. Because in your thoughts about you being good, you're probably just good to yourself, nobody else.
Right, and there's an analogy in that too. Even like in World War II, like you have the church kind of selling out to the Nazis, and then you have someone like Bonhoeffer kind of standing up, the confessional church standing up to saying, "Why are you guys assimilating into this when you should be standing against it?
Yeah,
you're the ones who should be the prophets speaking truth to power." And so Bonhoeffer was that, and he was executed for it. So I get it. Those Maesters didn't want to be executed for it. Like they've seen what happens around them if you challenge power, if you speak truth to power. But yeah, we see it in our own lives, in our own nation. You saw it happen on January 6th. You see it, what happened, Bonhoeffer and the confessional church over there. So I think there's definitely realities of how that expressed in our own day as well.
Yeah. And for any believer, we have to always examine ourselves and the things that we do through the works of the Holy Spirit. because Jesus said that the Spirit is there to teach us and remind us of the things that He did. And if we are not paying attention to what we did in relation to what we're supposed to do, then we think that just because we're in church, I'm good. Just because I'm a believer, I'm good. No. I'm pretty sure that you just as mean and nasty as anybody else. It's just that you hold it in real good. Because if you think that like my point is, if you think that you're good, you're not. But here's the other thing: if you think that you're evil or you think that you're bad, you're not. No, it's literally your choices that you make. It is the choices that you make, and if you have what Christian pointed out, if you have that hope, guess what? You're always going to choose to find something to be hopeful about to keep you pushing forward.
Nice.
But if you choose to see the bad, then you're going to find that thing that's going to keep you going down that path. But it's still a choice, and I love the fact that we can choose how we respond to certain things, and we see this in Game of Thrones that people choices dictated the storyline. A single choice dictated the single choice of having an incestual relationship that produces children. That's something they're used to anyway. That's what they're used to. But the fact is that it messes up the line to who gets claimed to the throne. Then people got to die. Because if you know my secret, I can't trust you to keep my secret. I have to kill you.
Yeah,
I have to kill you. And you killing folks and pushing babies out the window, all because you want to get around. Something's wrong with that. Something's wrong with that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Again, if you feel uncomfortable, good. You should.
Yeah. One of the great things I love is that every time you see God doing something with the people or individuals, He's making them uncomfortable in some way, shape, form, or fashion. Right. He is doing it on purpose so that they can then either recognize the God that they serve or the false that they have. But you're going to do some type of examination to figure out if you're doing it right or you're doing it wrong. But you can't get mad because God put you there. You can complain, but that ain't gonna change nothing. Well, it did, because they complained. I'm sorry, the Israelites complained to Moses, and eventually he gave them some water.
I know, right.
Yeah. Oh gosh, listen, we are almost at the end, so I got one more question, and I know, but I wanna ask this last question before we do our wrap up, and that is, how do you think this series has impacted pop culture? How do you think this series has impacted pop culture?
Oh, it was a game changer. I mean, again, the messages or the storyline and plot beats within this fantasy show, really, I would make the case are the same tropes that are in Lord of the Rings, they're in the Bible, they're in Star Wars. They're the same kind of high fantasy thing. They just kind of upped its game to HBO level of like. Sex, violence, and beheadings. So I think that's what kind of set it apart. But in terms of the characters, the lingo, winter is coming. Even if you haven't watched the show, you know that phrase.
Yes, you do.
And so I think it's there. It's there. Is major impact. It's up there on top 10 fandoms, geekdoms of all time.
Yeah.
So it's up there.
What about you, Christian?
I'd say it was HBO was never not successful before this.
Correct.
But they became way more successful after the fact, to the point where they were able to eventually create HBO Max and then greenlight a lot of other things that we wouldn't have seen the light of day before this moment in time. It helped, in some respects, revitalize the fantasy genre. I don't believe we would have seen, and I have not seen either one of these, so I can't speak to their quality, the Wheel of Time adaptation that was done and the Rings of Power as well. I'm fairly certain we would not have seen those be a thing. And the money that was poured into them, especially, without the success of something like Game of Thrones.
Very good point. Yeah. So people wanted to have their Game of Thrones franchise that they could dump money in that be that powerful. It's like, every streaming wanted their own kind of Game of Thrones and make the impact. But it's gonna be hard. It's gonna be hard to break all those records that Kino said at the beginning of this episode.
Listen. In my research, I found out that up until season 4 or 5, that HBO was spending $5 million on each episode, and then after that, it was $10 million per episode, and these shoots would take over a year, just from start to finish. It would take over a year to get all this done in how many episodes it was per season? Was it
It's around 8 or 10.
Yeah,
Mhm.
8 to 10, and I'm like,
And then the last one was like 6, but they were almost like every episode was like over an hour and 30 minutes.
Yeah.
So it was
they
like a
broke those
movie.
up.
So you're like, we're getting ready to watch 6 movies?
Yeah. No, see, Will, you again, you was able to binge. They broke the last season up too.
Yeah.
Yeah, they broke it up in parts. We had the first half, we had to wait, and I was like, y'all so wrong for this. Y'all so wrong for this. But
so that was part of the like unnerving irritation was they had to wait for it. Like they broke it up and I'm like,
It didn't help.
It did not. But I will say that you, regardless of what your thoughts about how it ended, you cannot diminish that you watched it faithfully. I don't care if you was pissed, you still watched it to the end.
Yes.
Because it held it the way that show was set up, it held you. And I love the fact that Martin took the time to blow up this whole fantasy world. Then the fact of having storylines and histories and houses and all this stuff, that it provided a rich narrative in the Game of Thrones, that where literally I remember preparing for season 8, watching people YouTube videos of the origin of the houses. Just getting prepared, and then learning about the history of the giant, not the giants, giants, the people of the forest, the old gods and new gods, all of that is still in the series that we ain't even touched on. But I mean, it is so vast, and so we're gonna have to do another Game of Thrones episode before we get to the House of Dragons. Like, we're gonna have to, because
we'll demand it.
We're gonna have to. They're gonna demand it anyway. They're gonna demand it anyway because they know that we ain't even touched on, like, just we didn't even crack the surface. We have not even talked about the White Walkers for real. Think about this. The whole point was to prepare them to fight what was coming beyond the wall.
Yeah,
we ain't even talk about that for real at all. So yeah, we're gonna have to have another episode. We're gonna have to have another episode because this was too good. But I will also say this about this show, that if you really want to understand what the Old Testament was about, watch this show, because the same type of killing that happens in Game of Thrones happens in the Old Testament. And I mean, we talking sex, drug. No, I don't know about drugs. Possibly.
Well, they were hopped up on something.
They were hopped up on something. Conjuring spirits and talking to the dead. Yeah, that's in the Bible too. That is in the Bible. So don't think that what you're witnessing is just new. No, it's in the scripture. It's in the scripture.
Yeah, quick story. So yeah, my daughters are in college and they binged Game of Thrones on their own, so we knew where they were on it, and we were finishing up, and we went and visited them up in the mountains of App State. We visited a church and listened to the pastor preaching, great sermon, and he started describing the Old Testament about like Israel being like really scared of like always being invaded from the north. And then like what was going on in the south, and then the like power hungry kings and Herod and the seduction of all this stuff. And Ella, like my youngest, turned to look at me, who's first year in college, like leaned over, she goes, that sounds like Game of Thrones. I was like, exactly. And so like I was like, I'm glad you're paying attention. And then you can see it's like, yeah, that is exactly what is happening. 100% right. So yeah, it's nothing new. It's nothing new.
It's nothing new. All right. So here we are. Finally, at the end, this sucks, because this sucks. This is one of the episodes I was really excited about, but I hate the fact that there's a time limit. Because I mean, I could sit and talk all night with the drinks. I gotta have drinks to talk all night, though. I gotta have a drink. Yeah, like
in with the final season where they're all sitting in the room together. They know what's going to happen the next day. They're drinking. They're making new nights out of people. They're like apologizing for things. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a moment. That's what we want to do. So maybe when we gather at like a Comic-Con or something, we can do like our own Game of Thrones circle and hang out with some drinks, and then we can talk about this some more.
Oh yeah, listen, I'm ready. I will be there in November.
Mm-hmm.
It's on my calendar. I'm going to be there in November for the Comic-Con that you got us for in Raleigh. I'm there.
Nice.
I'm there.
Yeah.
All right, guys. So, what's your recommendations? What's your recommendations from this? It don't have to be them to reading the book, but I would suggest that you read the book. Read the book.
Okay.
If you like the series, like literally read the book. And I'm telling you now, I'm not going to read the book. I'm being honest. I'm not going to read the book. I'm going to just listen to the audiobook.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what I'll do. I'll take your recommendation, and I mean, there's a lot of podcasts I like to listen to, but maybe I'll get the audiobooks and place it, especially if I have a long journey or traveling long distances at some point in the near future. Going to Germany in March with our college spring break crew. We're gonna follow in the footsteps of Martin Luther and do that.
Very nice.
So that's gonna be super fun. So maybe I'll get the audiobook, I'll plug it in my head, and then the journey over to Europe, I'll listen to that. I'll take that
awesome.
recommendation.
That's awesome. But what you got, Christian? What you got?
Well, I'm going to recommend actually an anime that's currently airing right now called Revenger. And the reason why I'm recommending it to here is because there is one character in there. It's taking place in the 19th century, if I'm remembering correctly. And this is a time and place where Christianity is outlawed in Japan ever since the Shimabara Rebellion in like 1630 something. And he is working as essentially an assassin, but every time after he kills someone, he prays to the Virgin Mary. And it's one of those things like, I don't expect that to happen. And I was like, especially a topic on the Kakakuri Kurishitan, which are a group was known as the hidden Christians who lived in Japan, who believed in Christ for 200 years in secret. I think he may be involved with that, and I just find that utterly fascinating. So the series itself is fine, but to those of you who are interested in that part of the history, I wanted to recommend that.
Nice.
All right, Will, what you got?
Yeah, I'm watching Last of Us on HBO, another HBO show, and just watched episode 3, which I was like, this was a video game? But it's moving. I love post-apocalyptic genre, however that looks, because it forces me to ask, like, how would I care for those that I love and what's most important to me? Very revealing, apocalyptic in that way. So yeah, I'm loving that show and glad that it's dropping on HBO on Sunday evenings. That's my Sunday evening appointment television.
Oh, that's wonderful. So my other recommendation is Severance from Apple Plus. If you have not seen that show, please just watch it, because it really touches on how we try to compartmentalize what happens inside our home and what happens outside of our home. And sometimes it don't work out like you think it does. And that was an interesting show, but it surprised me that it was really good. So if you get an opportunity, check out Severance.
Yeah. So workplace, personal life, balance or separation, and present part-time host on Systematic Geekology, Sari and I did an episode on Systematic Geekology about Severance, I believe. I don't know what episode. It's kind of early in the game, so I think we did a episode on that to talk about it. So yeah, check it out.
Yeah. So listen. I know you all excited that we talked about Game of Thrones, and we loved it, but we want you to still follow us. We're on all social media platforms. We have a Twitter, we have Discord, we're on Facebook. And I want to just do a shameless plug that the next episode that you might want to check out is the Power Rangers. Power Rangers. Yeah, Joe and Josh are going to be doing the Power Rangers. So check them out. Because listen, the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers are still bad. They're still bad. You might not agree, but they're still bad. And they're awesome. But just know that we love what we do. We are excited about what we do, and we're trying to show you that you can be a geek and still love God. That you can geek out on anything that you want to and still practice your faith. You want to know why? Because we are all a chosen people, a geekdom of priests.
Ooh.
This was an Anazao Ministries podcast. If you enjoyed this show and would like to learn more about our network, be sure to check out the Anazao Ministries Podcast Network.